So today I would like to welcome my lovely friend Kelly Glyptis to my podcast. Good afternoon to you, Kelly. Thank you so much for taking part in this. Now, you are in central London today, but you're not from central London. You are from the colonies. You are from the United States. But it's true.
The colonies, I die. Yes, I'm from the colonies.
You'd have just paid your taxes back in 1776 instead of throwing the tea into the harbour in Boston. The Tower of London we'd have all been one country, wouldn't we?
I mean, look, I would hate to say, honestly, I have no argument. Like, I live here now, and I have to pay taxes in both countries anyway. So
Exactly. Exactly.
I kind of
So
just, yeah.
where did it all begin for you, and what was your inspiration to become a West End opera singer?
Oh, wow. Yeah. So I have been performing since I basically was born. Actually, my mother was a professional dancer in the 70s, well, 60s and 70s. So she actually danced with the Seattle Opera in their ballet corps. And she met lots of opera singers. I mean, she was in high school. She had no idea who she was meeting, but she actually, there's a picture of her with Victoria de Los Angeles at the airport. My mom was like, this dancer, like holding this thing of flowers. And my mom was like, I don't know. She said I was supposed to meet some lady at the airport. So she had no idea who she was meeting. So my mother was a dancer. She was in New York. With the Alwyn Nicolai Company doing like modern dance. She did ballet and modern dance, and she toured all over the world. And then she came down to Virginia, where I'm from, Northern Virginia, DC area, and she took over this children's company, and she was a theater arts director. And she ended up choreographing as well. So I sort of became the little um, her little mini me, and she would flip me and do little turns and things, and she'd practice some of her lifts on me for the dances. And so I just sort of always grew up into it. My mother never, I will say, she never was a stage mom, still is not a stage mom. She never pushed me into anything. I wanted to do it very much. If I really wanted to just audition for something, she would she would support me, of course. But I also played football, soccer. I swam. Not many people know this, but I also threw shot put for a while.
Wow.
um, yeah, so I've kind of done it my whole life, and my mom was really an inspiration for it. And she also, it was really good because she never ever sugarcoated anything. She knew firsthand how difficult this career and this lifestyle is, because of course there is no guarantees. Even if you're a big famous, movie star or whatever, there's no guarantee you get the next movie. There's no guarantee, take the newest movie that's out right now, Wicked. I mean, obviously Cynthia and Ariana are fabulous, but think about the 900 other people who also auditioned for that. There are lots of famous people who auditioned for that, didn't get the role, right?
Yeah.
So it's always good to remember, right, that sometimes the answer is no, right? So she was always there to say that to me. So long story short, I got my master's degree in vocal performance and opera because I started studying opera when I was about 13. And my voice teacher at the time, he just looked at me and he was like, "You're going to learn this Italian art song." And I was like, "Oh, Italian." And he was like, "Do it anyways." So I did it, and I ended up really liking it. So I've always done musical theater and opera together, side by side. I just actually finished performing with the Lithuanian National Opera
Wow.
back in December. Yeah. So I got off the West End, and I immediately went into on location opera in Sheffield, actually singing Amelia in Un ballo in maschera. And then I went to Lithuania with the Lithuanian National Opera. So I do opera and musical theater both professionally, which is not something a lot of people do, but I think is something that is becoming more prevalent, especially with opera companies starting to do more musical theater. So yeah, that's kind of how I got here. And in 2020, I moved I moved to the UK, and I literally picked up two bags, got on a plane, and I went to Braintree for like
You
6 months.
you did, but you see, it's
I did.
it's it's a tough life, isn't it? I mean, look,
Yeah.
you're a very effervescent person, and you're always very positive. But there's a lot of negativities around the role of a performing artist, because I mean, when we first met you, I think I can't remember whether it was Mary Poppins or one of the, and you were literally living on a bus traveling around the USA
Yeah, so I
performing.
think I think when I first met you, I was getting ready to do Sound of Music
Sound of
national
Music.
tour.
Mm.
Yeah, and then I went into, and yeah, I was living on a bus. And then I went into the Fiddler on the Roof national tour. So that was the tour that I was on right before COVID hit. And then I obviously lost. We all lost our jobs, and we went home. And um, unfortunately, kind of the way America works, um, about 2 weeks after COVID shut everything down in March. It was March 13th. About 2 weeks later, we got an email from the company, and it said, "Hi, everybody. Just to let you know, your health insurance ends on April 1st. Thank you so much. If we, we'll let you know if the tour goes back up." And we all went, "Oh, okay." So, like, all of a sudden, no health insurance. So I was like, cool, 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 cool. My mother, was, she's high risk. And I was living at home. I was, all this stuff. And I just kind of thought, I think I just need to, like, I don't want to put her at risk. And so I went, I'm just gonna leave. And I just left. A lot of people think actually that Phantom in the West End got me a visa and brought me over. That's actually not true. So I came over in 2020, and I applied for the global talent visa because I felt like there were more opportunities here in England and hopefully in Europe as well. So that's what sort of initiated that for me, and it's turned out to be pretty good, I must say. So I'm loving England, and yeah, I moved to central London in 2022 when I got the Phantom contract. Yeah.
So let me take you back to this high school kid who's got a love for music. What do you need to do to become an opera singer? You're age 13, you've got the skills that have been recognized, but what do you actually have to do?
So
How do
training,
I'm 13 years old, I wish. How do I become an
yeah,
opera
right.
singer?
Yeah, I'm 13 as well. Welcome to the club. Yeah, so basically there's no there's no right or wrong path to take, in my opinion. And it's really easy, especially right now. There's a lot in opera, especially, where it's you do the young artist, like young, like 15 to 18-year-old stuff. Then you go to uni for your undergraduate. You try to get into summer programs, even if it's pay to sing. So we in opera, we have these programs, which I'm not really for. I'm just going to say that out loud, where we pay to sing. And
Really?
sometimes, yeah, it's sometimes, and basically the concept is not necessarily a bad thing. They are advertised as like training grounds and things like that, which is fine. The problem is that you get these places that are like, yeah, you get to sing this role and we train you for 4 weeks or whatever, and it's $5,000. And you're like,
Wow.
right. So the problem is, unless you have tons of money, you can't do that. So I never really got to do any of those. And I have lots of stories, in fact, where I even had a company that was a pay to sing who contacted my teacher when I was a first year master student. And they said, "Hey, we couldn't find anyone that we liked in our auditions to sing Suor Angelica. We always really love your students. Do you have anyone you could like put forward?" And he went, "Absolutely, hire Glyptis." And they emailed me and they were like, "Hey, Pulimanos told us this," and I was like, "Oh my God, I would love to." And they're like, "Great, so that'll be $5,000." And I was like, "Whoa!" I was like, "You contact." I was like, "I don't have any money," and they were like, "Yeah, well, how much can you pay?" And I said, "Well, I can pay zero." I was like, "Look, I'll even go do it for free, but I can't pay you." And they're like, "No, it's fine. We'll find somebody." So a lot of young singers believe that they need to get into these pay to sings, then eventually into young artist programs. And again, the concept of a young artist program in a big company, right, is not necessarily a bad thing. So a young artist program, like at the Royal Opera, like at Washington National, at the Met, like there's every company has one. Chicago Lyric, they've all Virginia Opera, they've all got um, young artist programs. It's not necessarily a bad concept. The problem is that they're hiring these young artists because now it's not really young artists. You have people well into their 30s doing this. Sometimes they're getting paid $250 to $500 a week, which is nothing.
Yeah.
And they're singing comprimario, like supporting roles. They're covering leading roles, and it's all in the name of training. And it's like, okay, and most of these young artist programs won't even consider you unless you have a master's degree.
That's terrible.
So yeah, so when you say how do you become an opera singer, the answer is there's lots of different ways. And not only that, I think it's important for people to realize that it's not just one way or one sect of singing, if you will, in the art world, right? So I believe in the way that I teach is if you know how to sing properly, in my opinion, that's in a classical technique, then you can sing anything. You don't have to just sing opera or classical, right? You can sing pop, you can sing musical theater. I belt, like I did Man of La Mancha, and I did all the belting of Aldonza, and that was with Opera Saratoga. I did some belting even in Phantom. I had these like low bits. Um, I've sung Tanya in Mamma Mia. I've done, I did Anita in West Side Story. So it's good singing is good singing. So I think the way to become an opera singer is yes, training. If you get into a young artist program, great, right? It's all about auditioning. But even still, there's a thing in opera happening. Hopefully, is starting to turn and change. But we have to pay to apply to audition. So not only like, yeah, like and that doesn't guarantee you an audition.
But that
That's just
that maintains the elitism in the classical arts. I mean,
correct.
I don't know what it's like in the States, but in this country, the government try and bring the arts to the common person.
Yeah, so I was gonna say
Sorry.
that's sort of how I felt about England. So for example, I worked with On Location Opera up in Sheffield, and I remember when I applied to sing Amelia, I got a phone call, and the head of the company was like, "Are you are you sure?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "But I mean, like you're West End." And I said, "Yeah." I said, "But this is beautiful music. It's art. It's." I said, "Yes, I know not a lot of money, but." I want to sing, right? And this is what I feel is that bringing opera to everyone, right? Which is what a lot of companies claim. And probably I don't know, I'll probably get blacklisted from everywhere now. I don't know. My agents are probably all sitting there going, no. But it's so important to open opera and musical theater, not just opera, but musical theater, all of these forms to everyone. I mean, we see this on Broadway where the ticket costs are so astronomical
Yeah.
that people can't afford it, right? And we're seeing on Broadway uh, these shows are closing in 2-3 months, and it's not because they're not good.
No.
It's not because of that. Like some of these musicals are getting fabulous reviews. They're getting acclaim all over the place, but they just can't afford the rent, and no one can afford to go see the shows. So I mean, luckily for us here in England, yes, I know there's lots of arts cutting and things like that, and that stuff is very real. And I don't I don't want to lower that or anything, but we do have arts councils here. At least we do have some government support in
Yeah.
some way. But it's so part of what I do, the reason I do musical theater and opera, and especially there's some concert work that's coming up for me that I'm really passionate about, is to show people that we can sing everything. We can all be musicians together, and we can give this to regular people. This is not an elitist thing. It's not. So yeah, that's going back to your initial question is how do you become an opera singer? I mean, the short answer is train, and audition. That's really, but what makes you an opera singer is, you sing opera. So you don't have to be famous. You don't, and I said this to a friend of mine as well. I think in the arts community, sometimes we get lost in our little bubble, right? I asked a friend of mine, I said, can you name 5 living opera singers? And he went, you. And I was like, right, no, I mean like and he was like, I said, great, name three, right? So it's, I think we all need to remember that it's not this concept of like famous opera singer or famous musical theater. Like I think we all need to like calm down a bit. And even still, like we're seeing in the West End right now, all of these movie stars and things like this, they're all coming back to their roots, right? We have a lot of people performing in Shakespeare and plays and things like that coming back to the West End because that's the way we connect with people, right? Not to say the movies aren't fabulous, because they are, obviously, but just look at that coming back, right? Even in the West End and at the Barbican and all of these places and the National Theater and stuff, we have so many people coming back to the roots of theater to connect with people in real time in real life.
At the end of the day, these famous West End stars, Hollywood A-listers, they're human beings. They get up in the morning, they go to the bathroom like everybody else, they have their breakfast like everybody else, they go to sleep at the end of the night. Now, the likes of Helen Mirren, Dame Maggie Smith, who passed away, they're Essex girls. Whether they like it or not, that's what they are. You know, they're from Essex originally.
Yeah.
Maggie Smith was from East London, Essex, Ilford, and Helen Mirren's from Leigh-on-Sea. But they, as long as you, what was it Bob Marley said? As long as, if you know your history, then you know where you're coming from. And that is exactly right, because we need to know that, don't we? And I love the States, but I do find certainly Broadway is geared up for the tourist. They want the tourist dollar to go in there, and people will go to America, and they'll spend their whole vacation going to a Broadway show that they could see in the West End with an equally brilliant company.
Yeah.
I
Well,
find it quite bizarre.
I mean, but Paul, like, look around the West End right now. There are a lot of Americans coming over, and that's not a coincidence.
No, absolutely. It's probably cheaper for them to come to London and do it than it is to go into Broadway.
No one believes me, but because everybody says to me, how on earth do you afford to live in central London? And oh my gosh, like blah, 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 that's crazy. Like, oh, it's like living in Manhattan. I'm like, it's nothing like living in Manhattan. I went to New York literally a few weeks ago, right before Christmas, and there was I went into a CVS, or it was a Target, right? I went into a Target, and I was just gonna buy like some ketchup and a thing of cheese and maybe, I don't know, some chicken, like just to make a little, mustard and whatever. The ketchup, right? What, let's say mayonnaise, because mayonnaise is a big, we Brits, well, I'm not British, but the Brits love their mayonnaise. Let's be honest, right? So I was gonna grab mayonnaise, mustard, ketchup, like the three condiments, and then I was gonna get some bits, right? So the mayonnaise was like $8
Wow.
for a bottle of mayonnaise. I can go to Piccadilly Circus. My local Tesco Express is the Piccadilly Circus Express on, right? I went there. I'm not kidding, Paul. I went there 2 days ago. I bought I can go get a bottle of mayonnaise that big, right? It was £1.
Yeah.
Now I grant you, it was on sale with my Tesco card, right? But I could buy a bottle of mayonnaise in the middle of Piccadilly Circus,
Yeah.
for £1.
Yeah.
Right?
America's expensive now. It's so expensive.
Yeah, it's insane. But for the arts, we have to find ways, and I think this is coming out. We have to find ways, like with all the immersive stuff that's happening, both in New York and here in the West End. The immersive stuff is starting to become really big, and it's starting to become really, really popular. Yeah.
As a kid, you grew up in Manassas, didn't you?
I did. Manassas, Virginia.
Manassas, Virginia. What was that like? Because the reason I ask, is it somewhere that is used to opera and culture, or I mean, were you considered to be an odd child? I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, but we
Disrespectfully, yes, I was. Ask my mom; she'll tell you. No, that's a really great question, though. So I was really fortunate. So I lived in Northern Virginia, is like this weird little place, and there is art and culture, which is really nice. I was really fortunate. The schools that I went to, in Prince William County, actually. Shout out to Prince William. So yeah, I went to a high school especially, but even my elementary school, like we were allowed to start doing choir or band or orchestra in like third grade when we were like 8 years old. So we could choose, which is not common. Um, and a lot of schools have gotten rid of that, especially at the primary level. When I got into middle school, for example, which for me was, it was like 11 to 13 ish was my middle school. Um, so I I was able to do all national choir. I was able to find outlets like that. I also had the children's theater that my mom ran, which was a fabulous children's theater that she cultivated for over 30 years. And they ended up getting actually reviewed in the Washington Post and got a 5-star review. Some of our kids actually, they worked with an opera festival with Lauren Mazal, this very famous conductor, and they went to Oman and performed in Oman for the royals there. Yeah, like so I'm very lucky where I'm from, and like I said, Northern Virginia, because it's closer to DC and Maryland. There's a bit more culture and art being cultivated there, which is really nice. Um, so it's not necessarily that I was odd. I think what made me odd was more the opera, because of course more people do musical theater, and choir singing was big. So when all of a sudden at 15 I went to the Washington National Opera Institute for young singers, I was, and then the next year when I was 16, I went to Italy and I performed in my first opera in Italy when I was 16. So I
Wow.
think yeah, so when all of my friends, were over the summer doing summer school, or I don't know, whatever you do in the summer when you're a teenager, I was performing. But not only that, I was also working. So like when I went to Italy, my family couldn't afford to do that. So on the nights that I wasn't performing, I was actually an electrician. And I helped with spotlight. Yeah. So I started training as a backstage electrician at the age of like, I think 15. So I had some spotlight experience in the United States, and then so I begged them to, give me some tuition off if I worked as an electrician. And then I ended up doing electrical work for 6 years, all through my undergrad and master's degree. And I became a lighting designer as well.
Wow.
And I also, yeah, there was another program I did in uni, again, doing some opera. And because I'm also an actor combatant as well. So I do stage combat and like stunt work and things. So I actually was able to offset some of this tuition that I had because I taught some um, stage combat classes, and then I actually consulted for the opera company because they were having some issues. They were trying to do a waterboarding scene in one of their operas. Yeah, it was very intense. But I've been a consultant and a fight choreographer as well for, I mean, over 20 years I've been doing all of this. So I know I don't look it, but it's
Very cool.
yeah, yeah,
That's very cool. So your road has been, it's been a tough one, isn't it? You've been at the bottom of the hill and you've been climbing and climbing and climbing, and you've got there, haven't you? I mean, and it has been persistence. I vividly remember your shout outs. Have I got any friends in New York? Have I got any friends that, and it was literally you were trying to find bolt holes in order to maintain sanity, I think, around as you
yeah,
travel around the US.
yeah. It's very real. Yeah, I like you said, um I've been very fortunate in my life with lots of aspects. But I also, and I credit my mother to my persistence and my chutzpah, I guess, if you will. But even in uni, there was a very short period of time where I lived in my car, and I was unhoused for a bit. Yeah, and a friend of mine found out, and she let me come in and sleep on her futon until we could sort it out. So I know what it's like. It wasn't a long time, but still, I was showering at the uni, like in the lockers where the electricians were and stuff like that. So I had access to that. But yeah, I mean, sometimes it was
Tough.
not easy. So, opera and musical theater and you know, all of that. It's not the glamorous necessarily all the time. Sometimes it's glamorous, sometimes it's great. You get to walk the carpets, but we've all had to, climb and dig our nails in and fight. And I think, and it's a lot of people like, oh my God, you're so positive and you're so upbeat. And it's like, well, you know what? Yeah, I worked really hard and I fought really hard to get where I am. So
You are very positive, and I mean that's that, and we're proud of what you do. You know, when you got your
oh,
role with Phantom, it was like, well, our friends in Phantom of the Opera. Absolutely. I just, and I do feel for all these young people that are going, yourself, that go through so many hurdles, jump so many hurdles in order to get to where they want to be. And sometimes it's a war of attrition, isn't it? Because I'm sure there's been many times where you could have said, "Do you know what? I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to go
oh,
and do, I'm going to go and
oh my
do
gosh, yeah.
something that is less stressful and more lucrative." But go back to that 16-year-old child in Italy. What was your first role? What did you sing first? Do you
Oh
remember?
gosh. Yeah. Oh yeah. So I'll never forget it. So it was kind of wild actually. I had seen the year before in DC, I had seen my very first opera, which was Suor Angelica. And excuse me, I just like sobbed. I remember it was a double bill. It was the Impresario and Suor Angelica because they're both one act operas. And I saw Suor Angelica and it affected me so greatly. And it was, it was like a college
Yeah,
production of it. It's not like, it wasn't even like a professional production. Um, and it had such a profound impact on me. And the very next year in Italy, I got to sing one of it's just like smallest role you could possibly have. It's called the Prima Novizia. I had like two lines, but I was so excited. And I remember during one of the performances, we were in this church because we did it in this church. It was stunning. And I just, at the very end, I didn't even sing because I was just crying in the back. And they were like, Kelly, they were like, you have to sing your part. And I was like, okay, okay. So, um, no, it was beautiful. And the other show I was in was Marriage of Figaro. I was just in the ensemble. I was one of the like flower girls, which was, I mean, it was a great experience.
good.
I do have one memory where I was standing on stage, um, and we were doing a dress rehearsal, and the conductor only spoke Italian, and of course, at the time, I didn't, speak any Italian. I could say like hello and the lamp and stuff like that. So he got up from his podium and he pointed his stick at me and he just started screaming at me in Italian, and I was like, and everybody was like looking at me and I was looking at everybody. I was like, oh my God, like what did I do? And the first violinist like stood up and she was holding her violin and she was like listening to him. She's looking at me and and everybody knew that I was like the little 16-year-old because everyone else, I was the youngest person there. Everybody else was like 19 older, all at uni. I was the little high schooler. And he finishes his rant and she looks at me and she kind of like paused for a second. And he went on for like minutes, right? And she looked at me and she just went, please don't upstage the leads.
Really?
And I went, oh, and she was like, it's just too much. And I went, okay, thanks. Like, but he was like, like it was, those like if you watch Whose Line Is It Anyway, and they do like those and they're like, blah, 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 and they go, hello, right? Like it was literally like
Yeah.
that. I was like, oh my God, what did he actually say to me?
How fun
So
is
I'll
that?
never know. I'll never know what he actually said to me. But yeah, I was like, oh dear. So I accidentally upstaged the leads in a dress rehearsal. But it was incredible to be 16 in Italy, and I went by myself because, like I said, my mom couldn't afford to. She came to see the shows, but she couldn't afford to be there the whole time, obviously. Um, so it was really special, and Rome will always have a really special place in my heart because that's the first time that I ever. And then the next year, when I was 17, my choir in my high school. So this is what I was very fortunate. My high school was actually invited to sing at the Vatican for one of the masses.
Wow.
Yeah, so we actually sang for one of the well, some people say we sang for two popes because one had just died, so he was technically lying in state. But I find that weird to say I sang for two popes because he was dead. So, but
Yeah,
we sang, we sang for one of the popes. It was really special, and we got to sing in Florence and Tivoli and all that. So yeah, my experience in high school was a little bit different probably from most people's,
you know.
but
So
it was very special. Yeah.
when you got involved in coming to the UK, what was your journey like to get into Phantom? How did you go down that route, and what was that like for you?
Oh gosh. So it's not a lot of people know this, but I was offered two other contracts in the United States almost almost directly after I got my visa. Like within like 6 months. So there was one that I got, I was offered, and I turned it down because I was like, no, 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 like I just got this. I just got the visa. I paid all this money, like, I have a credit card debt, and I was like, I'm gonna try, right? So, and then I got cast in this incredible world premiere in Surrey, the Surrey Opera, and I was like, great, not a lot of money, doesn't matter, whatever. It was just something. So, and it was stunning music. David Hackbridge Johnson, beautiful composer. So I was really excited about that. So I got to the fall, we like finished, finish it, and then I was offered another contract back in the United States to go on tour. And I remember having this conversation with my mom, and I was like, Mom, I can't say no to a contract, right? Like how do I,
Yeah,
we're just coming off of COVID. How can you say no to a job? And my mom said, look, she said, just give it one actual year. She was like, you haven't even been in England officially for a year, right?
no,
So I turned it down, and I was beside myself. I was like, I can't believe I'm turning this down, but I turned it down. And 3 weeks later, I saw the listing for Phantom, and me, my US and my UK agent at the time, all three of us submitted for it without each other knowing. So I actually submitted three times for the role. Um, and then I got the initial audition. So I was like, okay, great. This like cool. And then this sort of 7 week thing happened. I had six auditions for the role,
wow,
which, yeah, which was crazy. They were all fabulous. I had a really great time doing all of them, but I've never done six auditions for a role. And if you count the initial like materials handing in, it's seven. Um, but I remember my final audition. It technically it lasted 6.5 hours. I was there because they were having to go through everybody. So we had like a morning session, and then we had the afternoon session, and they had to go through all the rows. And because I think there were five rows that they were in the finals, and there were four of us Carlotas, and so it was a lot of waiting around. Um, and all of us just kind of sitting there, and they're like, "Oh yeah, go to lunch, go have a coffee," and I'm like, who is going to? No one is gonna like go have a burger, you know what I mean, and like chill. Like we're all clearly gonna sit here and like have half a cup of coffee and a banana. Like that's what we're all doing right now.
yeah,
So but yeah, it was so that process took a really long time. I was also only about I was only like 4 weeks out of surgery. I had had a abdominal surgery, so I was doing all of this literally coming off of a surgery. But then what was really hard was 3 days after the audition, I found out I got it, but I couldn't announce it. That was in like February, I think, like beginning of February, and I couldn't announce it till July or like June. And so like trying to keep that secret was really really hard. But yeah, it was an incredible 2 years, and I absolutely loved it. And then getting to pop right back into opera immediately. I mean, literally immediately after I finished my Phantom contract on a Saturday, and then Sunday I took a train to Sheffield and started rehearsals
wow.
for that Un ballo in Maschera. Yeah, this is my first time in 2.5 years that I am sitting in my flat and like doing laundry, and not I don't have a show tonight, like, and I'm resting. So it's
That's
kind
cool.
of nice. Yeah, but I still need a job. So if anybody wants to hire
Yeah,
me.
absolutely. What was it like? You've walked in for your final audition. You've walked into your final audition, and in there, I assume Andrew Lloyd Webber, Cameron McIntosh. Who was present?
Yeah. So in the morning it was sort of like a practice run. So it was our director Seth. Um Simon was there, who's the musical supervisor, Malcolm, who's the conductor, um, Hugo, who's the resident director. Uh, who else is there? Um, some of the sound people were in the back as well, because the rows had to be mic'd up and stuff. Um, so the morning was sort of just like getting used to the space and all that, getting notes from them. And then the excuse me, part of the reason why it took so long was because um obviously it was still sort of mid-ish COVID. So Andrew Lloyd Webber was getting ready to go to Australia to open the Australia production. So he was umming and ahhing a little bit about whether he was going to attend these auditions in person. So in the end, he decided not to, just because
Right.
he had to travel within 2 days and stuff. So he wanted to isolate. So what they did was they brought a bunch of people from his really useful group. They set up a camera, and I think he was like zoomed in. They either recorded or he was zoomed in. I can't remember, but his whole staff was there, so they had to bring all them in. And yeah, Cameron McIntosh was sitting in the audience. And he was really sweet. I had a really great time with him. He was very funny, and I started with my cadenza for the Carlota cadenza, and I was really nervous because he turned to the musical supervisor and he just kind of laughed, and I was like, "Oh no, like, is that good or bad? Like, what does that mean? Like, holy crap!" So, no, but we had a really nice back and forth rapport, um, and yeah, and I ended up seeing him at our Christmas party, that next year, and he's a very sweet guy. I always enjoy seeing him when he was around. So yeah, it was a really good experience for me. And everybody was just so sweet and so supportive. And it's nice in musical theater, they they talk back to you.
Yeah.
Sometimes in opera, you sing your aria and they're like, okay, they go, thank you. I mean, that happens in musical theater too, but it was a bit more lively, I'll say, in musical theater. So yeah.
But of course, he's one of the greatest impresarios in the world of all time, isn't he? I mean, he is. So, did you find that experience particularly intimidating, or were you nervous?
Um, I mean, anyone who says that they're not nervous is either lying or or they're or they're kidding themselves. Of course I was nervous. But I knew the material. Excuse me. I went in and I did my job. And that's basically all you can do in the end. I mean, I even messed up the words, like with scare. Yeah, like to prima donna. Like messed. I don't even remember which ones I did, but I like made up a bunch of words. I kept going, obviously, and then at the end, I looked at the music supervisor, Simon, and I said, oh yeah, what did I say? I was like, I said, next time I do it on stage, I'll get the words right. And he was like, hey, you kept going. That's all that matters. I was like, right, yeah. So it's it's just is what it is, and it's live theater, and it's of course I was nervous, but I remember I when I did my Fiddler on the Roof national tour audition, Bart Scher was in the finals. He's obviously a very famous director, Tony award winning, all that. Brilliant, brilliant director. And I auditioned for him. And at the time, I always make it a point. I don't know, maybe this is bad of me, but like if I don't know them right off the top of my head, I don't Google them, I don't look them up. I just go, okay, whatever. When I saw him, I went, oh, right, this guy, right? Like, but I didn't look it up. So when I walked in, he was just another guy, like, and like you said before, we're all people, and the thing to remember is the people on the other side of the table, because I've been a director, I've been a music director, I've been a choreographer, I've done all that. We want you to be good so that we
Yes.
can cast the show, right?
Yes.
We don't, no one, there is not a single director out there who is watching someone walk on stage and going, I really hope she's terrible. Like,
Yeah.
wouldn't that be a laugh, right? No, they all want to go get their lunch. They all want to go, yep, done. She's cast. Great. Let's go to the pub. Like,
Yeah.
that's what everybody wants to do, right?
Yeah.
So the sooner that you really believe that, the better. And for me, it very much comes down to, this is how I sing. There you go. And sometimes you have a really bad audition. Sometimes things happen and you just say thank you and you just walk out and there's nothing you can do about it. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Is there anything that you haven't performed in that you would love to perform in? Is there a particular part that you would love to do?
So so what's on the West End right now? I would love to do Nancy and Oliver. That's
Oh, would you?
like, oh my God, I love Nancy. She's fantastic. And yeah, like when I saw that they were doing that at Leicester, I was just, I think, wait, was it Leicester first, or they were out of town, now they're in town. I can't remember which theater they started in, but I was so excited. Um, and I still need to go see it because I just got back into town, but I love Oliver. I actually played Dodger when I was 11.
Okay.
Just saying, yeah. And I did Nancy when I was 18, but I would love to revisit that. So I'm really hoping that like gets renewed and maybe I can like go audition and convince them that, you know, an American can do a Cockney accent.
I'm sure you can.
I'm sure I can too. Mama knows it. Yeah, but I'm trying to think like, because I know there's stuff. I mean, obviously, like Hercules, Meg would be amazing because I'm Greek, so that would be awesome. But I am really excited to see that this summer. Because I think that's going to be a really fun show. Um, I mean, obviously, there's things like Hadestown, Persephone would be a phenomenal role, stuff like that. And the obvious ones like Les Mis, doing like Fantine or Madame Thenardier, Hamilton, Eliza or Angelica, like all the big ones, obviously. One show it's never done is called Honk, and I feel like it didn't get its day in the sun. It's about the ugly duckling, and it's like some people think it's really dumb. They're like, oh, it's ugly. It's just like people in like sort of duck kind of like costumes. So the music is so beautiful. And the role of Ida, who's the mother, it's such a stunningly beautiful musical. And I really wish somebody would put it back on. And of course, Man of La Mancha. I could just keep going. Sorry, you just cut me off. Yeah.
But what is your favorite opera piece?
Opera. Okay,
Yeah.
so opera. There's this show called The Consul. I mean, Suor Angelica is like one of my absolute all-time favorite operas. I would die to sing that role. So if anybody's doing Suor Angelica, hello, this is me. But The Consul as well. I sing this piece called Papers from it. It is one of the most incredible pieces, and it is relevant. It's been relevant since it was written. Um, and it's basically, to make a very long story short, this woman's husband has escaped to another country, from the secret police in their country. She's trying to go through the consulate to get her and her baby and her husband's mother into this other country, and basically the baby and the mother both die
Wow.
in the meantime, and because basically the consul is going, sorry, or the consulate, the secretary, she never sees the consul, and she is begging, she says, we're being targeted by this secret police and blah blah blah. And they're like, well, you have to do this paperwork, you have to do this paperwork, you have to do this paperwork. And and in the consulate, there's a few scenes in the consulate where you see these women who come up. And I think that's what's also really interesting about this show, is that there's a lot of female roles. Like there's one of a mother who says, my daughter ran off with a soldier from this other country. He's now left her. She's sick with the baby. I need to go see her. And they're like, sorry, we can't let you into the country. And she's like, my daughter is dying. Like, like I need permission to go. Like, here's the letter, and they deny her basically. And then there's another woman who they're reading her file, and she's like, oh, the whereabouts of your husband, like last known whereabouts was a concentration camp. We don't know where he is. Like, everything has been denied. You need to go back to your country. And she's like, I can't, like I'll be detained and killed. And they're like, and the secretary's like, yeah, that's not my problem. Like, you're not allowed to come to this country. So it's very relevant. And there's lots of frustrations and things. And then there's also the very real side of the story of the secretary. There's this one scene where she has these like hallucinations of all the people that she basically has to say no to every
Right.
single day. So it's such an incredible piece. And I just wish people would do it more. So I always sing it at my auditions to try to just convince people that they should do it because it's such a good show. It's probably my favorite opera so far that I've seen or experienced or been in, because I've been in it as well. So it's an amazing opera.
Do you go to the theatre a lot yourself? Do you go and watch lots of things?
I try to go, especially go support my friends, and do that. But yeah, for the past couple years, well, actually, even before when I was on tour and stuff, it's hard.
Of course.
So obviously, I was performing 8 shows a week, and as much as I absolutely adore and love my friends, we all also kind of understand this. Going to the theater on your one day off is kind of yeah, like
That's
it.
tough.
Yeah, I'd have done it obviously, and it's not that I wouldn't, but like, and there were days where I would go see a matinee and then go perform my own show, right? Like, it's not that I don't, but there is a little bit of an element of like, I need to not like I need to see the outside a little
Yeah.
bit. I need to see the sun. I need to like see that. So yes, the answer is sort of yes and no. Like, I have seen a lot of shows. Um Usually it's to like support my friends and go see them. Obviously the shows are incredible. But there is also an element of, if I'm actively in a show, it's a bit difficult because I do need my rest day to
Of
rest,
course.
obviously. Yeah.
How much rest do you need to give your voice? I mean, we are chatters, aren't we? We do like to talk,
Yeah.
you and I. How long do you have to rest your voice between performances, or is there a structure around protecting your voice or a regime?
So for everybody, it's a little bit different. Everybody's voice is different. Um, Musical theater's hard because we do 8 shows a week, every week. Sometimes you do 9 shows a week. Sometimes they're back to back, matinee, evening. Um, excuse me. So it it kind of depends. I mean, I always do a warm up and a warm down, no matter what I'm doing. The nice thing about opera is very rarely do you do shows like back to back.
Right.
So, or if you do, it's like you do 2 shows in a row and then like you have like a week off, or something like that. So usually you do a show, you have a day or two off to rest and recover. It's usually 2 days. Then you do a show, you have 2 days off, you do a show, right? Or you do 2 shows, have 4 days off, or whatever it is, to just sort of recoup and get yourself back. So in the West End and on tour, and especially on tour, what's hard about tour is that you're not in your own bed. So, and you're sleeping on a bus, or you're sleeping, in a hotel. And as much as that sounds glamorous, sleeping in hotels is not as nice as like everybody thinks it is. Like, that novelty wears off very quickly. um, so it's it's all about having little procedures, I guess, if you will, that are personal to you, especially if you're on tour, that can help give you a sense of routine or a sense of normalcy no matter where you are, right? Whether that's, you have your humidifier, or you have a little regime that you do. For me, it's, checking my voice, warming up, things like that. I have this like witch drink that I make if I'm feeling a little off. I always have apple juice. That's like a big thing for me. If my voice starts feeling a little scratchy, marshmallows or like gelatin candies, things like that. Yeah, just a little like tips and tricks. Um, but it's really about taking care of your body and taking care of when you get to rest, actually rest.
Right.
Yeah, so for me, a lot of it is warm up, warm down. Because especially after a show, if you're getting off at 11 o'clock at night, you're still hyped up. You're not really gonna. You don't go home and just fall asleep. You have to wind down. You have to get yourself into a okay, I'm ready for bed kind of mentality.
You don't go out and party though, do you? Not every night.
No, I would never. Yeah, we enjoy the pub. We like to have a good time. No, it just depends really. And I mean I can't tell you how many times I've been to the pub and gotten a glass of water and just said hi to everybody and had a nice time. And it's and sometimes I can use the pub time to sort of warm down my voice a little bit, and get it down as I speak. But no, yeah, I mean, occasionally you got to let loose. You got to
Oh,
got
sure.
to do it, but it also depends on the role as well. Like Carlotta makes it a little bit more difficult because she sings very high and she sings a lot. So she's got to have a lot of rest. So
Yeah, absolutely. Now, for me, my favorite musical is West Side Story. You mentioned it earlier on.
oh
I
yeah, I was at
absolutely,
Nita.
I absolutely love that. And, historically, it goes down as being one of the all-time greats. It's a
Absolutely.
Romeo and Juliet, but in a different format. That's what it is. And it's been regurgitated by a number of directors, giving it a number of different names, but it's the same Shakespeare plot effectively. But
Did you know that originally it was supposed to be Jewish and Protestant, and they decided that that was too
is that
hardcore, so they
right?
changed it. Yeah, they changed it to Puerto Rican and white.
Is that right? Well, there you
Isn't that
go.
crazy? Yeah, yeah.
That is
Little
that
fun
that
fact.
that is crazy. But what next for Kelly Glyptis? What are you going to do next? I mean, you've got your eye out for the next role. I assume you'll be auditioning somewhere in the world, looking for that next break and moving
Yeah,
forward onwards.
yeah. I had two self tapes today, like just today, to do, and I do have a concert that I'm doing in April with Opera Idaho, which is a Broadway pops. I was sort of alluding to it, and there's something else potentially in the works that I can't talk about. But yeah, there's there's some stuff. There's always stuff behind the scenes going on, and hopefully, I would love to pop back into the West End and do something, do some more work there. Like I said, like Oliver would be, and I just live down the street from Oliver, so it'd be really nice to just be able to walk home. But yeah, I'm still auditioning places, and I'm still doing some opera auditions as well. So just hopefully having the world kind of open a little bit and see where it takes me. Yeah,
And of course, you teach as well, don't you?
I do. Yes.
You do online teaching, and we'll put all of your links to your social media, your TikTok, your Instagram, all of that. We'll put that in the body of the text. But who do you teach and how do you teach? Because you live a very transient lifestyle. How do you undertake that?
So I teach anyone, any experience level, doesn't matter. But yeah, I'm very, very upfront about the fact that obviously I'm performing. So I'm at maybe my own downfall, who knows. Um, I don't do like contracts and stuff like that. So obviously a lot of teachers, you like sign up, you pay for so many in advance, and there's if you cancel 24 hours and you pay a fee. And so I don't do any of that. And the reason I don't is because if I have to fly to New York tomorrow, I have to fly to New York tomorrow, right? So I'm very upfront about that. So I tend to tell people, if you're looking for someone like a teacher who is in person here in London all the time, and you're really looking to like train and to like get into uni, and especially for like young students, get into uni and like get a degree and blah blah. I'm probably not the best teacher because I leave and throw my hands up at that, right? Because and I experienced this as well. Like when I was looking for teachers, the people who are going around the world and stuff, that's really great. But I needed someone in my younger years. I really needed someone
Yeah.
who could help, who's there every week. Or if I wanted extra lessons every single week, I knew they'd be there. So I tend to teach people who they love music, they love singing. It's a hobby. They do it as an amateur. I do have students though who are at NYU. I have students who are at Ithaca. I have a student who's at Long Island University. I've got students all over the
Wow.
world who who are also performing professionally. I have a previous student who she's now a model professionally. She opened for Coach last year as well. So I mean, she's not singing anymore, but it's still part of the whole art scene.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I've got, like I said, I have students who do perform professionally. I have a student who is about to go into her master's degree. So it's not that I'm against it. It's just I'm very open about it. Like you said, my transient lifestyle. As long as everybody's okay with it, then I'm cool. We can, And when I'm in New York, I teach my New York students in person. If I'm in Washington D.C., my Washington D.C. students get to see me in person. So it's a little win-win. And if I'm in France, I'm planning to go to France, hopefully at least once or twice a month. And so my French students will get a chance to see me in person
Very
as
cool.
well. Yeah, so I've got students all over the place. It's kind of crazy, actually.
So, Kelly, we're going to listen to some of your singing. All right, we're going to listen to a few seconds of you singing.
And of course, there's my father. I'm told that young ladies can point to their fathers with maiden pride. Mine was some regiment here for an hour. I can't even tell you which side. Won't you look at me? Look at me! God, won't you look at me? Look at the kitchen sluttery.
That was absolutely fantastic. Now, if people want to see you perform, obviously they're going to have to keep in touch with you on your social media and make sure that they know where you are at the relevant time. Thank you so much for taking part today. I've really enjoyed our conversation. It's lovely seeing you again after all this time, and hopefully you can come out to the countryside and see us very soon.
I love you,
And
Paul.
I love you too. And I hope that back in the States they listen to this and see what a brilliant person you've always been a brilliant person, but to achieve what you've achieved is, there aren't many kids in Manassas that have done what you've done.
Thanks, Paul. That really means a lot.
God bless you. Take care.
Bye.
Bye, 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 bye.